Okay, so I'm going to build through this sort of conceptual talk that looks at a framework of communication for academic libraries. And this is really about an hour-long talk that I'm going to try to turn into 5 or 10 minutes, so forgive me for that. When it comes to communications, there seems to be two general approaches that you have. Sometimes you have some news you want to share. Maybe your library got a grant, maybe got a new collection, whatever it is, there's sort of a new thing, a change that you want to share. And then there's sort of a pathway of how do you get that to the intended audience. On the other side, sometimes you have the audience that you want to reach, let's say parents, for example. What do you want to tell them, and what's the best way to tell them? So there's sort of two things to kind of think about in the back of your mind of how do we build a system or a framework that'll deal with this? How do we push out discrete information, and how do we push out to distinct user groups as well, or even just groups? They don't have to be users. Okay, so you're really going to kind of start with why, about why should we care, and that kind of a thing, and you can see the general concepts and some questions here about, is it really a utility, or is it something sort of bigger than that? And this is something that really comes together with shaping a brand identity of what really is the point of the library. What is the relationship that people have, and so on. I'm going to make these PowerPoints available so you can kind of go through and actually read them, but I'm just kind of working through it right now. And so it comes down to brand and branding, and this is the kind of simplest way that I've always tried to explain it, and what really kind of worked for me is the brand is sort of the memories, impressions, it's the sort of intangible things, it's what people think about you or your library, and it's just sort of a fuzzy, subjective kind of thing. Branding is sort of the logos and the words and the look and texture, things like that. It's tangible, even though it might be virtual. It's still sort of tangible in that form. But it's really what something looks like, and it's sort of the Nike swoosh, if you will. It's what they see and what they hear. And so what I'm talking about here, this next few minutes, is really about building brand, but it could be branding too. And for my sort of personal instance right now, I'm advocating that we transition from a house of brands into a branded house. And that's a whole nother topic for itself. But really, it's kind of looking at how do we kind of build an experiential portfolio in which the library is really defined by what we do rather than what we have. So instead of it being very sort of siloed, it's the trendy word these days, instead of it being very sort of departmentalized, or this is my function and this is all that I do, it's really about a sort of a bigger, interconnected, holistic approach. And so that's what we're going to look at here. This is the sort of framework that I developed, and I'm going to put some meat behind it in the next slide, but it really kind of shows you what you kind of need to have is a unifying brand concept at the top, and then under that are a series of themes. I went with 6 of them for mine, but if you adapt this, maybe there's something else that works for you. Circling that is an internal communications pipeline. This is how we share information about what we're doing, which gets then funneled into production, into the various channels, and then down into your sort of target audiences. This allows us to sort of collect and describe our information and then push it down to the audiences. It also allows us to kind of look at the different audiences that we have and then try to see how can we match them to the different themes or different topics that we think might be of interest to them. So let's take a look at how this looks a little bit more. So again, that brand portfolio is kind of what we do, what we offer. What I've kind of really, where I'm at right now with what the library's about, and this could change in a few years, but right now I'm really into this concept of the library transforms people. In some way or another, it's transforming what people do, what they believe, what they think, whatever. It's having that sort of an impact on them in the broadest perspective. And then under that are different themes, and I try to approach this from a larger holistic point of view rather than sort of, like I was saying before, a departmental view. So I'm going to get into each of these later, but you have teaching and learning, you have gathering and sharing, exploring, presenting, connecting and helping, welcoming and engaging, encouraging and inspiring. So we'll get into those in a few slides, but now circling around this is sort of the internal sharing of news and updates. This is the sort of info flow. This is how we keep everyone that works in the library sort of in the loop. We also enable people to participate by sort of jumping in that loop with different information, or we have people that go out and sort of curate different information and bring it into the loop, if you will. So it's sort of a process. And that goes into sort of our production funnel here, where we're really looking at writing and design and sort of message prep. So this is kind of what we want to say, and then how we say it is how it gets sort of distributed through our various channels. These are just a couple I pulled, webs and print, and web meaning it could be sort of social media, it could be our website, it could be on someone else's website, it doesn't really matter. Newsletters, our newsletters that are publications that we create, other publications around campus or in the community, people, it's just an inventory really of all the different channels and outlets that we have to interact with people. And then the last group is sort of our audience. I picked three here just to provide an example: freshmen, faculty, community. Could have parents, grad students. You can get even kind of more detailed there, of like juniors and seniors and staff or untenured faculty and so on. It depends on how ambitious you want to be, but it's this concept that we have portfolios of the people that we want to reach, and how do we want to reach them, what messages of interest to them. So this is who we're going to deliver our message to. And so if we look at it a little bit more, again, this text will be available online, but it's the unifying brand concept, again, looks at sort of transforming people, and it's kind of why we exist, how people benefit, engagement, range of experiences, meaning social, academic, intellectual, cultural, creative, service, and there's all types of ways that people interact with the library besides just our online databases, besides just our study spaces. It's something much bigger, and one of the couple bottom points there is we enrich lives, or we nurture curiosity and productivity. I mean, it's a much broader, much bigger, much sweeping goal of what the library has. And then we can get specifically into that instead of departments or units, we need to view it as outcomes. What are we trying to achieve here? And so I went with 6 themes, again, just to get an initial brand portfolio. It's really more of a proof of concept than a working model right now. But these are the sort of themes that I think interweave that help us to build that sort of transformative mission, if you will. And let's take a look. They're kind of broken out a little bit more. We can see teaching and learning is sort of our effort to strengthen the sort of educational mission. This is the one that's pretty obvious and pretty familiar with us. But next up is sort of gathering and sharing, and this is kind of the collection side. But not just the sort of print collections, even digital collections, but much wider of how do we collect and process and describe and make things available to people. Exploring and presenting, this is a little bit more kind of like the research, what's traditionally considered, I guess, research on universities, but this is sort of our effort to enable the discovery and the application of information, and sort of how you're sort of presenting things, and whether that's in conference papers or articles, books, whatever. It's that sort of exploring and presenting aspect. Next on the bottom there is connecting and helping. Again, that's kind of common in libraries, but again, what's our total efforts to bring people, ideas, and knowledge together. Welcoming and engaging, this is kind of providing a comfortable environment, but also a comfortable level of service, comfortable websites, just this broad range of comfort and practicality and usefulness in terms of our services and the experiences that people have. Again, it's not just academic, it's cultural and creative and a whole host of other attributes. And then lastly is sort of this goal to provide encouragement and inspiration, and how do we sort of provide an uplifting, ongoing relationship with users, or even non-users for that matter, and push the library, present the library in this manner. So these 6 themes, these 6 threads kind of interweave together to support the mission to be transformative. And that's kind of the brand portfolio. The internal communications pipeline, again, this is sort of how we can get out there and push information. This is sort of, sometimes this is working in the sense of people on your team are going out and looking for information to report. Sometimes people are reporting in, but it's just this continuous, infinite loop of gathering news and preparations. Some of that too, you can see one of the bullets is sort of a planning worksheet, or some other form of whenever new services are launching, or spaces are developed, or events or exhibits, things are happening. It's sort of a one-page document that's like, here's kind of a checklist of things we need to do so we can describe and communicate it effectively. Okay, production funnel. This is really, really, really important one here, because you really need to consider the look and feel. This is where the branding piece comes in a bit. But this is kind of, if we really want to be considered professional, and we have to look professional and act professional and all that, and so it's important to invest in this aspect. So it's really good writing and really good design that just kind of prepares that messages that we want to push out. So consistent visual identity and standard messaging, building and tying into those themes, so that everyone's kind of using the same language, speaking the same language, and our internal staff are all kind of on board of things. And then developing and editing text. Sometimes it's just production, just getting things done. But this has to be very clear and identified. And then our outlets. This is really kind of a chart, sort of a Google Doc is what we're kind of using. But it's how do we kind of keep order of all the sort of library outlets, the things, the publications and other social media, web, things like that, as well as sort of campus outlets like orientations and other types of publications like parent newsletter, alumni newsletter, things like that. Our community outlets, our sort of national publications that we interact with, a Rolodex of contacts, of a shared sort of inventory of who's who around campus and around the country for that matter, so that we can get in touch with people, and then a calendar of events and other strategic opportunities. So really kind of updating our channels and knowing who's the contact at various places and responsible for that. And then lastly is sort of our target audiences. Again, these are pretty much people that we want to interact with on campus and beyond. And it's good to kind of keep a very short portfolio of who these people are and what would be of interest to them and how we can reach them in effective ways and experiences we've had, good and bad, to chronicle that and to learn from. So it's really having a really well described sort of target audiences there. And so this is kind of, again, the model, how it looks. Starts with the brand portfolio and works its way down to the general audiences that we want to reach. Thanks for listening. And if you look at the website, you can link to my blog where you'll find information about marketing and branding, and also probably a link to this PowerPoint slide. So thanks, everyone.